Hey everyone, this is Nick from Tenacity.ai with my co-host Jason. You're listening to the Cloud Cost Optimization Podcast. So today we want to touch on some recent news, cover off on a few trending articles in the space, specifically around the economy and what's going on there. So I guess first I want to bring up just recent and probably the biggest, though we'll touch into some other areas here, but the biggest news is that the IMF has come out and said actually we're probably not headed into recession across most countries. It looks like the UK still will hit a recession, but US and otherwise not going to hit a recession. I've been hearing for a while as well from those in the industry, analysts in the industry, that they're looking at a shallow recession is possible, but now we're seeing that maybe it might not even dip into recession. Jason, thoughts on what that means to our listeners, or when we think about spending and budgeting and cloud cost optimization? How does news like that affect us as we're managing our budgets?
Well, it sure feels like we're kind of in a recession, I guess, based on all the conversations. But I'm not so sure that necessarily will affect 2023's budget, because I think, if you're not planning for something, for a recession to happen, especially since, what did this report come out like in the last 2 weeks, right? So it's already 2023. I don't think it affects budgets for 2023 that much. But I do think that it could change the end result. I mean, you're not going to go back and change your budget, especially your cloud budget, as a result of a report from the IMF. But the more reports that come out like that, the more our sentiment, kind of the consumer sentiment starts to get a little bit better. And then next thing you know, it's a long, slow climb, but we'll be out of the danger zone and we'll be back to some sort of normalcy. And so I think it probably doesn't affect your budgeting that much, although I would say, depending on what happens and how quick it happens, it could affect your cloud spending for the year. Might not affect the budgeting you did last year, but it could affect, you could choose to invest in things during the year that maybe you thought you didn't because of the economy. Those are just a couple of the ways it will affect it. But I don't think it changes much about what was done, especially if your budgeting cycle is, calendar year, right? I don't think it's going to change much of your budgeting for this year. But we'll see, right? I mean, it all depends on what happens.
Yeah, I think, the sentiment is still there, and it takes a while to change. It takes a while to change sentiment around economy. Everyone's looking for the positive signals in the uptick, but everybody's in conservative mode, and that's sort of what drives length of a downturn. So it'll be interesting to see how this evolves over 2023. I think it's a long road as you come out of a downturn, which is typically 2 years, 24 months, right? Is a long dip. So, and I think we'll see that. It is interesting to me that they're now looking at the data and saying, not a potential recession, though in a lot of ways I kind of think to myself, well, the damage is already sort of done due to the sentiment.
It's up here. Yeah.
It's all mental, right? And what's also interesting to me is similarly looking at jobs report and looking at labor, and labor's really strong right now. I mean, we're still at what, a 3.4% unemployment rate,
which is the lowest ever.
Really low.
Something
yeah.
Like that.
So we're looking at, and we're seeing this as well inside of our networks. I'm personally seeing this. Folks who are maybe caught in the layoff, moving really quickly into the next roles, and getting scooped up. I think there's a lot of shift, not a lot of people staying out of the workforce for very long. And so it is interesting to me that labor is remaining strong through the downturn, which is a good thing, especially in tech, which, as we experienced in 2008, at least when I was hiring in 2008, there wasn't a downturn in tech. There was a downturn everywhere else, absolutely, but we struggled to hire in tech out on the East Coast. It just really, you were still having to recruit away and make strong offers as much as our HR and our executive team didn't want to invest that way. That was the reality of getting talent in 2008 as well.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it doesn't feel like 2008 yet. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I mean, I think, that was a little bit of a different thing, right? I mean, COVID happened. We had, a surge in hiring due to the pandemic, right? Due to the change in the way that people worked, and especially in tech with all of the, money in the companies that, started to put stuff in the cloud just to get it up and running quick, right? I mean, we saw spending in the cloud go skyrocket. AWS doubled their operating profit, and they overhired, right? I mean, that's really more of the reason for a lot of the tech layoffs anyways, because there was a lot of overhiring done during the pandemic and needs have changed. That coupled with consumer sentiment, the economy has led to some of the, but if you look, I mean, outside of maybe Facebook, but if you look at some of their earnings, it's not like these tech companies are in a world of hurt. They're just preparing for what might happen. And so I think that what could change, maybe not to a specific company's budget, is that we might actually see a lot of those hires go back into, a number of those hires go back into the tech space, right? Because, this is, these companies are huge. That's what they have to do. They have to constantly cycle people in and out, make sure that they're preparing for the worst, and then they bring those people back when they know things are going. So I think a lot of the tech layoffs were due to the overhiring during the pandemic, and and obviously preparing for what could come in 2023. But I think that also kind of swayed things, because if you heard for a few days that, oh no, the economy's falling out, the recession's coming, Amazon just laid off 10,000 employees, Facebook laid off this, Twitter laid off that. And I think there were a lot of reasons that led to those hiring, not necessarily the impending recession. And that obviously, and then if you couple that with the things that happened with like FTX and all these other things, sentiment is down right now. And the more reports that come out like this, the more we'll see sentiment come back. And that's really truly what's going to fix this thing, is when you and I decide, oh, we trust investing in companies, maybe not like FTX, but, we trust that they're not going to be taking our money. We're now starting to see reports from the IMF, maybe some other, well-trusted sources that come out and say those things, and we'll start to see that tick back up. So I think, if anything, 2023 is going to be the year of the return. Everything's going to come back and start humming again.
Hey, well, you know how I feel about markets. Everything's on sale, and my portfolio has been doing awesome. So,
right,
good for retirement, not good necessarily for what's going on currently. But all right, no. Well, I think we've kind of covered off on this topic. I think it's we want to be doing a update every couple of months here on sort of what's going on globally, and it just seemed relevant to kind of dive into and see that interesting juxtaposition of labor versus sort of sentiment on the economy. And I think those signals are good. It's still important to keep control over those cloud spending. I think we got a long road out of the downturn still, and certainly with labor shift, it becomes more important than ever to kind of have your arms around what's going on inside of your organization, whether that's building a FinOps discipline internally, or whether that's getting help from an external source, or whether that's having the right tools in place in order to have that visibility. I think that's still critical, regardless of where you think 2023 is going.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to keep control of your cloud budgets, especially with the way the economy is going, knowing what you have, why you have it, where it is, et cetera, is the only way to really make sure that you're going to stay in line with your budget.
Excellent. All right. Well, I think that wraps our episode. Head out to tenacity.ai, download the Cloud Cost Optimization Handbook, and we'll constantly be updating the tips and techniques we have in there for making your cloud even more efficient and managing your spending. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.